Obviously, it's never going to be the real thing, and I think you have to kind of use it with the right mindset. You can't act like it is the real thing, but you definitely got to take the things that are very close to the real thing, and you got to use that to your advantage. I think like something like braking technique, and then kind of general racecraft, racing against others. That's something that's definitely transferable. You should do some karting before you get into a real car, but I think a lot of the stuff in karting is not transferable to a car. It's very different, you know, solid rear axle, rear brakes only, and yeah, it's not exactly like a car, and I think a lot of things from sim racing kind of transfer more directly.
I enjoyed karting, but I didn't enjoy karting as much as I do enjoy driving cars. I mean, karting is tough, and there's a big discrepancy in equipment. There's a big discrepancy in, you know, who's spending what amount of money.
I mean, sim racing equipment, if you're spending 10 grand on it, it'll last you 5 or 10 years for sure, but there's definitely more entry-level setups that you could probably get into iRacing for under $1,000, which is really a bargain for how much you could do with it. I mean, iRacing subscription costs, I think, less than $200 a year, so that's kind of half a day at a kart track.
I actually have like a love and hate relationship with simulators. I'm not a fan, because in a simulator, it's really hard to feel the rear of the car. And there's two types of drivers that drive the car with the front of the car, and drivers that drive the car with the rear. I'm more of a rear feeling guy. So in a simulator, you can't get any sensation of the rear. Everything is all the inputs are just through the steering wheel. There might be some vibrations, but you don't really get the feeling through your bum. It is so much crazier in the real car. I think sims are great to getting to know a circuit, if it goes left or right, gearing, you know, somewhat in braking zones, but just whenever you get to the real circuit with the real car, just because you're quick in the sim doesn't mean you're going to be quick in the real race cars.
I think some people are like just good on the sim. I can feel that you get used to the sim. You know, most of the time when you go into the sim, the first few laps you go off, you do mistakes and stuff like that, and then you get used to it. So it shows to me that it's not really 100% natural, you know, and you get used to it. You can improve your skills on the sim, but sim is something, pure racing is pure racing.
I think some people are good on the sim. I think obviously it'll translate to some extent in terms of, you know, taking the right lines and having the right techniques for the most part, but I still think sim racing and real racing is quite different, and you know, I'm not sure everyone can be a great sim racer and a great race car driver.
I think we haven't seen many opportunities for sim racers that have gone from sim racing to the real thing, so we haven't seen a large sample size of that, but I think there are very good sim racers that could be good in the real thing.
I don't think it'll ever get to the point of it being like the real race car, because there's no way to simulate all the forces, like, you know, on your sides, you know, forward, backward, on your neck. It's really, really tough.
Once I'm racing on iRacing, I'd say I'm just as stressed out or just as like nervous before a race on the sim if it's a big race compared to the real thing, and the nerves are still there. It's still real racing. So I'd say once you're into the racing, it's pretty similar in terms of kind of that fear factor.
What it does help me is sometimes get back into the mentality of racing and competing. So if I've had maybe the winter break and you know, I want to get my head back in racing gear, I can do these competitive online races where it actually means something if I win, lose, have accidents, whatever. So it puts you back in that mindset.
I guess in testing on iRacing, I'd say I crash more than I do in the real thing, luckily.
I think it's a great entry. You know, the games nowadays have such good graphics, and you know, if you have the right seat and pedals and steering wheel, it can be pretty realistic.
It's kind of one thing to watch onboard video of a track to try to learn it, but actually doing it yourself on the sim definitely gets into your brain a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently. And I think any real driver that's not using a sim, I don't think there's many at a high level anymore that don't use a sim. I think if you're not, I think you're really losing out, you know, on an opportunity to improve. And I think it's sort of becoming a necessity because, I mean, it's just an easy advantage they can gain over your competitors.
Esports is now going to be the grassroots form of motor racing. Simulation is a good, inexpensive way relative to other forms of motor racing to look at some driver talent.